Hello, all. Sorry about the delay. The weather and ever changing pressure systems and storms have been wreaking havoc on headaches, but not as bad as some people have. My buddy Sean is going on hour 12 of a really bad migraine, so feel better, buddy. Hopefully, by the time you see this, you'll be through the worst of it. Yikes. Take care of yourself. That's bad. Um, but this is gonna round out my God of War coverage. Um, Unless you want to see the full review that I'm gonna try to do next week. Uh, the same with Far Cry, my reviews are patron only. They do not do well enough on YouTube to bother with. They cack my traffic, but some people really like them. Some people don't mind paying for good game reviews. So you know what I'm going to say. You want to see my game reviews? Become a patron. Help support this channel. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Just $1 a month. It helps out a lot. It really is appreciated. And people seem to really like the game reviews. I mean, people are really enjoying the commentary content I've been doing lately, which is cool. Found the sweet spot. More about that on Feedback Friday. But yeah, the reviews, I do them old school, and people seem to like them. So if you are interested in that, kick a couple bucks. You won't regret it. Right. But that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to round out my God of War coverage by showing one of these weird things. I don't know why people generally lost their minds about this game in a negative way. Losing your minds in a positive way, I get. More on that in the review. But there was this article that sort of... It's really easy to show the double standard in gaming by using this article. And I want to be clear before I dive in. I personally think that gaming websites should be able to write about anything they want. I don't think people should be the arbiters of taste. If you don't like something, don't read it. I think that there's enough labeling and categorizing and curating that goes on the internet that as long as stuff is clearly marked, you should be able to avoid stuff you don't enjoy reading, you don't enjoy watching. That's why clickbait titles and misleading titles are so blinking annoying, because you don't realize this is not something that I want to read until you're in it and discover, wait, this is not what the title made me believe it was. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying that pieces like this shouldn't exist. I'm just going to do a little experiment. I do these every so often, substitution experiments. And what substitution experiments are is it's a form of trying to figure out whether or not something is sexist or has an element of sexism by taking, or racism or whatever, but you take a statement, substitute a particular term. If it seems really bad, when you substitute that term, congratulations, you just wrote something probably bigoted. And it's an important test when you're writing your pieces. I caught myself on something with this test, because I was like, oh, I'm saying this about it was actually about God of War. I was like, I almost tweeted something about calling people boy in real life, and then I realized, oh man, that would be extremely racially charged if it involved black people. There's a sensitivity there. Don't say it. That's why this test is useful. It stops you from putting your foot in your mouth. And so what I am going to do in this article on Kotaku called An Ode to Kratos' Nipples is I am going to substitute the exact text of this article, but make it instead about Tacky from Soul Calibur 6, because Tacky as well also has visible nipples through her bodysuit. So I'm just watch. The results are telling. So Imagine that instead of a woman writing an article about a male character, this is a male writer writing about Taki from Soul Calibur, or Take. Taki. Take would be an E. So, Taki. Taki's magnificent ponytail has received a lot of attention. That's fair enough. It is stately head hair worthy of recognition. Yet when I sat down to play Soul Calibur 6, the first thing that struck me about Taki's physical evolution wasn't her head rug. It wasn't the care so clearly worn on her sword. It wasn't her second sword. It was her nipples. Those nips. Those tiny flesh nubs, those teats, those nubile cherriolettes. What craftsman decided upon the size of these areolae? Who modeled those teats? How was this shade of skin elected? In my previous nipple roundup, Taki had some of the most disappointing nips of the knot. A mere circle of pigmented color, no raised nub. They were recognizable for what they were, but only due to their placement on her body rather than through any identifying detail. Now, Taki has returned a changed woman in more ways than one, and I dare say her new nipples are the most magnificent I've encountered in any game. They even protrude. I'll stop there, because could you imagine a male games writer writing about Taki's nipples that way? He'd get freaking slaughtered. And I'm not saying he necessarily should get that response. Perhaps it is somewhat juvenile. Perhaps it is a waste of column space. Perhaps it is even besides the point. Perhaps, as, I did, most people weren't especially perplexed or impressed by Kratos' nipples. The thing I thought was actually coolest was the way they'd worn his tattoos down as if they were abraded. It's really cool. I'll switch back. I'll show you what I mean. You see these the patches of skin on the tattooing, like they've rubbed through. It's like an old tattoo. That and the scars, the way they did the scar on his chest and then the way they aged the scar. This was actually like red and relatively fresh in the first few games. They're older scars in this game. That's what I noticed. And then like the irritation around the elbow and things like that from the bracers and all that stuff. Those were the things I noticed. The nipple was there. But this writer... This isn't the first nipple article she's done. She's done an article on the best male nipples in gaming. And they're all male. Let me show you. I have that article up. Hanzo from Overwatch, Doomfist in Overwatch, Kratos is there, Geralt, Juggernaut, Pudge. These are all... That's a kid. That's a freaking kid, man. What the heck? Like, this is all... Could you... Oh, alternate costume. Remember the shitstorm of Resident Evil? This game hasn't even come out yet. The Sims, I hate The Sims. Johnny Cage. Like, what the hell? You're ogling at Oka? Okay, the only women included on this list are monsters. The only women included are the brood mothers from Dragon Age Origins. So no actually attractive female nipples on this list. Just because it's a woman doing it to a man doesn't make it any less sexist. It is sexism. It might not be systemic sexism of the kind we talk about a lot, but this is sexist. This is objectifying these characters. Now, like I said, should this be verboten? Should this be bad? I don't think so. I think there's a place to have fun with characters in this regard. I think she missed some really good ones, but that is neither here nor there. I think that the problem is that if a guy wrote an article, as I showed, that wrote about Taki the same way this woman wrote about Kratos, people would be out of their minds, freaking out, angry, protesting. Now, big deal, so what? Why does this matter other than the principle of hypocrisy, the idea that there shouldn't be a double standard? Well, when you continue to apply a double standard like this, it seems like in the short term, women are getting the better end of the deal. But it's actually not true, because men are allowed to be whole people, including sexual people, while female characters are not. And artistically, that is a big problem. The reasons like Hanzo and Geralt of Rivia and Kratos, and they're allowed to be these big, bombastic, larger-than-life characters, and women are not able to be that, because the morality police always freaks out whenever someone notices, hey, she's kind of hot, or she's very hot. And this demonization of the male sex urge is something I'm really concerned about, because we should be able to get to a point where male sexuality is not seen as inherently predatory. That concept is straight up dork side. The fact that there is social power dynamics inherent in a individual man's sex drive, what a man does and doesn't find attractive. Here's the thing, guys. We are a race that procreates sexually. We have sex to reproduce. And this is not getting into, anything about, you guys know I'm very pro-gay rights and all that stuff. I believe in same-sex marriage, and people don't have kids. I don't have kids. Just the reality is we reproduce through sex. And sex outside of reproduction is another, we have sex for pleasure as well, just for straight up reproduction. Not every animal species does. Some do, but a lot don't. And this is really important, because we have this pleasurable activity that we have made into this predatory thing, as opposed to something that's enjoyable for both parties. And, this dwark side attitude, the writings of Andrea Dworkin, this is not healthy in the long term, and it continues to perpetuate the idea that women somehow need protection in a unique way that men don't, and that denies women opportunities. We should not require anyone to have a more heightened fear or a more heightened self-defense script constantly running in the background than other people. Everyone should feel equally safe. Everyone should feel equally like they can relax. Because if you can't relax, you can't really think the deep thoughts. And that's part of the reason I don't want to come down too hard on articles of this kind. I think there are a place for them. They could be quite funny if they're in like a shit posting section. Essentially, like if people just want to write shit post and publish it because they think people will find it funny, and it's labeled appropriately so people who don't want to read it don't have to, fine by me. But then the same authors that write this stuff write things about God of War finally growing up, and it's like, seriously, how do I take your word for something being mature when you are not showing an ability for maturity? And if you don't believe me that it's the exact same writers, I just pulled it up. Here we go. I'll remind you again of who wrote the, see? There we go. Amanda Yao. Here. And then Amanda Yao. Here. God of War is finally grown up. And look what she wrote in this article. My most enduring memory of the previous God of War games is an uncomfortable university gaming session wherein I sat amongst a group of men watching a half-naked Aphrodite seduce Kratos. Even though you are no longer the God of War, she purred, crawling across her bed toward him, you can still share my bed. I'd been trying to integrate myself into the gaming club for some time, posting on the group's forums and attending club activities after classes. The others weren't unfriendly. At least one other woman had managed to establish herself in this group. But there was still a constant feeling of being on the outer that I couldn't quite shake. And she described God of War 3, God of War. Oh my God, there's sex in God of War 3. The hypermasculinity threaded throughout and the hypersexuality of the women depicted therein was alienating. I'm sorry, when you write an article entirely devoted to a man's nipples, you are showing feminine hypersexuality to the point where she actually talks about looking at the snow and trying to stomp penises into it with her character's feet. Don't believe me? Here, check out the snow, I'd exclaim to my sister, doing my best to make Kratos' feet draw a dick in it. Which is it? Is hypersexuality disturbing to new people? Or is it okay? Or is it okay when we do it? And this certainly comes across as it's okay when we do it. All the guys in the gaming group that she was encountering did was watch a game. There is nothing in the article about making comments or anything like that. She is sexualizing a non-sexual game. And she decides to be the arbiter of maturity? This has gone full Kotaku. That, they just stand in judgment of things even when it doesn't make any sense. And when people are tokens, sorry about the phone, guys. When people are tokens, this is sort of an indication of tokenism, that they're not treated as actual professionals that are expected to live up to certain standards. They just have to be there to say, look, we have a woman writer, preferably a woman of color on our staff. But they don't actually develop them to make them into better writers, because their whole purpose is to exist and be there so they can point to them and say, look, girl writer, we're not sexist. When you don't hold your female writers to the same bar that you hold your male writers to, that is sexism, that is paternalism. And when you start thinking about who your next editor is going to be, it's going to be the person that showed improvement and was able to take criticism and come back and get it right the next time. And a female employee can't show an ability to do that if you never check her, ever. If you don't ever say, you need to step up your game. These are hypocritical points of view. Which is it? What do you really believe? If you never challenge someone that way, they can never show you what they're really capable of, which means women don't get promoted because they're never tested. And that pisses me off, because I've gotten the sense sometimes that editors have done that to me. Now, usually it's the other way around. I had one editor once tell me, well, I knew you'd make a better argument, so I went to the other guy first. That doesn't make much sense, because then he'd already made his mind up and he just told me, no, we're doing it this way. It's like, do I get to state my case? He'd already made up his mind, because that tends to happen. Whoever gets to someone first wins. But he deliberately sought out the weaker debater. I think because he wanted to go their way in the first place. But you cannot have different rules for different people. And promotion, rising up the ranks of a company, comes from being the person that people hold in the highest regard. It's not enough for people to like you. Has this person displayed leadership characteristics? And if you are never challenged, if you are never tested, you don't have the opportunity to show those leadership characteristics. So what happens the next time there's a purge? You're just flushed out the door, because you're low down on the totem pole. You're just a writer. There's no upward mobility. And if you're stuck in the same job, people tend to leave. People, if they don't get promoted within a company, then they go somewhere else where there's actually an opportunity for promotion. And that's one of the things women complain about in workplace, is a lack of opportunity for upward mobility, a lack of opportunity for promotion. And I think it's this paternalistic sexism that no one wants to criticize certain things for fear of being accused of sexism. And this is unworkable. We really need to deal with our shit here and get better, because this is not fair. When you can't check a writer for such an obviously hypocritical pair of articles, It shows that the management of this website does not respect this writer. It reeks of tokenism. They're letting her do whatever she wants because the whole point is for her to be there, like I said. So that's why I said in the short term, it seems to benefit women. But it really doesn't, because let's face it, what's worse? Not being able to say certain things on the internet, or not getting promoted, therefore making more money and therefore having more ability to actually influence the industry. I think that lack of influence and promotion is actually the greater sacrifice. And most of us women do not want that. We want people to voice their opinions in a respectful way so we can respectfully discuss the feedback instead of just and then not publishing, or and letting us publish subpar work. Editors should be working with writers to produce better content than a piece on Kratos' nipples. Now, like I said, in a different climate, I'd have no problem with it. It's just you can't then turn around and say, oh, this game is so much more mature when you're using that exact same game to draw a dick in the snow. Have I made my case? Good. Thanks for watching.